So at lunch, I had this, microphones sound weird. Okay, at lunch, I had this conversation with somebody. I remembered a random call and response, and I kind of would just like to do it 'cause it'd be really funny. I don't know if it was Tim Vine or Alex Horn or someone, but the call is, what's being killed? And the response is, the atmosphere. And it might be good halfway through if I get stuck somewhere. So, what's being killed?
The atmosphere.
And the good thing is you instantly have atmosphere at that point. Okay, so whimsically, or whimsic accessibility. I can look at this screen. So number one, find a cute word and to add to A11y, the numeronym for accessibility, which we use, because them's a lot of letters. Because you need a cute name for every project and a domain name. And A11y, I mean, I say Ali, I can't help it. It just is, and I'm not sorry. So, hello, my name is Sara, also known as Sara Joy. I'm both an old hand, so I was making my own little websites for myself as a teenager in 1999, and also a not-so-newbie, because is that 3 years ago? 3 years ago, I moved into web development from kind of just doing electronics and a bit of hardware and a bit of code, sort of. I work for a company called pirateship.com that no one's ever heard of unless you're American. We help people send packages. You can ask me later, it's fine. So I've been messing around with ideas to help more lay people build simple websites. And by lay people, I mean non-devs. Just because I thought maybe people might want to build their own simple websites. So this is one. It's based on James Hoffman's landing place. You know, the landing page. He's the coffee guy. And the idea was like, well, maybe if the actual code told them what to do, maybe it would be easier just to take the code, be told what goes where inside it, and then be exposed to it instead of doing a WYSIWYG sort of thing and never seeing it. So that was just an idea, and there's another one which was a bit more bloggy, and possibly somewhere in that code I've said you can repeat from here to here. I just thought, well, maybe people would quite like to play with the code. I don't know. I tried to ask a couple of my friends who would be maybe interested in that sort of thing. But lay people or not, they have other interests, and they're busy, and they've got kids, and there's other stuff to do, and they might just not be interested in code, and I guess that's okay, even if I don't get it. Anyway, it's probably because I miss the old web. Old web. Like, maybe you do too. Maybe some of you had a homepage between about 1995 and 2005, probably still do. But there was something about that decade, I feel like. There were web rings, and later came blog rolls and guest books, which were my favorite. I tried so many different guest books, and my friends would always try and break it by putting random bits of HTML and JavaScript in there. And so, no, there's no more web rings left. They're all gone. None at all, apart from all these ones that have been signed up to by brisray.com, who is a guy who was originally from Bristol. He's now somewhere in America, I forget. And he's also been logging all the web rings he can find. 337 web rings for a total of 12,717 websites. So there's quite a few of them around still. And blog rolls are passé, but they're not. Actually, he's redesigned this website since I put this up. But blog rolls has suddenly come back in. I have one. Or I did, and then I felt really slightly anxious about which friends should go into it and which shouldn't. And because I didn't want to insult anyone, I just kind of made it really small. And guest books, how embarrassing. But they're not really. So I was lucky enough to be interviewed by Manu Moriel. Some of you, if I said that right, he has a really nice, very gentle webpage. And at some point he emailed back saying, you've got a guest book. Why have you got a guest book? And I was like, I don't know, it's fun. It's this kind of drive-by way. He was always very keen on emails and people emailing him. And it's like, yeah, but sometimes people just want to leave a drive-by comment and don't want to email. So, yeah, so mine was there as well. He's got like a blog roll of guest books. So actually, lots of people are building their own sites. So we do have, us devs and nerds have our own little website circles. Some are sleek and professional. So this is Daniel Schultz. I mean, it's also kind of fun as well as professional. I just like that it's punchy and simple, and it's got this lovely little contrast color slider at the bottom. And I was like, ooh. And being me, I was like, ooh. And then I went, what happens when you get to the middle? Something very clever there. But what's nice about that is actually if you do get migraines, low contrast is better. So great. Some are playful and joyous, and this is a callback to our own Sufi Kunin, who's up here somewhere. And if you haven't seen her website, go and play with it, because there's so many linked style sheets, and they're all just gloriously different. I think my favorite one might be the vaporware one, but they're all so good. I don't know how often you add a new one, but I feel like every time I go, there's a new button, and I love it. There's my favorite. And some make our jaws drop. So this is Henry from the web, Henry Desroches, I think his name is. And it's just extremely buttery, and it doesn't have all the colours, but it's just lovely. And if it jerks a bit, that was my computer just struggling at the time. But just really lovely scroll-based navigations. Yeah. So this isn't nearly all the websites on the internet, of course, because it's not only devs making our own personal websites. I feel like as a lot of us are in the same circles on the internet, and we only see other developers making websites, but there's a lot more. Like, there really is a lot more. The old web is not dead. There's this Melonland Surf Club, and I love this. Autistic as FXXK. Raise your middle finger to neuronormativity. Is a whimsical, could be called whimsy, a floating unicorn, two-tone, lots of GIFs everywhere. And this old web, it still exists. I just wanted to show that it's not gone away. So the surf club is this kind of bar across the top, I guess. It's just a way to navigate between them. They don't have to have that there. And I found it interesting, these slow-loading pictures. I was like, oh, I wonder if they'd done that on purpose to make it look a bit like 56K stuff like we had in the old days. No, they're just loading massive pictures. But it's fine. This is they're experimenting and they're toying with the web, and some are less interesting than others. And at some point they get a bit less safe for work. But for example, see that huge picture? I mean, that was probably quite a lot of meg, because I was on my broadband at home. I just wanted to show how glorious this is. These things are still there, right? So that's that. There's also NeoCities. You probably remember GeoCities. That went away at some point, but NeoCities now exists, and it's championing all this exploration. Yeah, some of the websites we've just seen are actually there. So a lot of them are hosted on NeoCities. And then there's the Melonland project itself. So the Melonland Surf Club is part of the Melonland project. I can't remember his name. I think he's Irish. He's an artist. He calls himself the Melon King. And there's a forum, and the forum is glorious as well. But he's dedicated to the idea of the web revival, he calls it. And I just really love everything that he's done. And just wanted to show you that these things do exist. There is so much whimsy on the internet. Sometimes we get stuck in our developer bubble, I think, and we don't see so much of it. Hello? Okay, don't remember that one. And then there's also, some of you are probably part of the indie web, there's the Yester web, there's the Tildeverse and 32-bit cafe. There are communities everywhere, and they're building and they're teaching each other, and the old web is not dead. And it's almost more interconnected than it ever was. I feel like nowadays the internet is so big and everyone's on it that this looks like it's gone, but there's probably more people doing that than there ever was. So these people, they are diverse and they are inclusive, and many are themselves neurodivergent, for autistic as FXXK, and or disabled, and they want their websites to be accessible, if possible. But they might have limited spoons. And I don't know if you've heard of spoon theory, but it's the idea that you can talk about energy, but imagine you wake up with 10 spoons every day, and you give one away to your shower, and you give one away to making breakfast, and then you have to go to the grocery store, and then that's 4 spoons at once. And at some point, you run out of spoons, and you're just done. And some people call themselves spoonies. They wake up with fewer spoons than other people, for example. It's a nice, tangible way to think of it. So the last place I want to send them is to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, because this is not their world. It's not written for them. It's written for auditors and, well, us. And, you know, I'm not going to send them there. Yeah, so these sites, they are joyous and experimental and excited and multimedia. Some of them even have like a sort of web-based Winamp sitting on top of them. They're colourful and inventive and avant-garde, not always accessible. Some are a bit tricky. Some of them are also very strongly not responsive. They actually do quite proudly say, best on a desktop of a particular resolution. And it's clearly a callback to the 90s, but yeah. But do they have to be? And these are people's homes and their pet projects on the web. And most of our own homes do not have stair lifts, ramps, adapted bathrooms, or labels in Braille yet. I mean, my father has just got a stair lift. These things will happen. I expect I will get arthritis in my hands, like my parents and grandparents with the sort of adapted taps. You know, it will come. Should all types of art be accessible to everyone? This is where there might be some sound. Luckily, there was a content warning, so I can just read this out to you. There's flashing imagery and quick glitchy animations. Please don't view this web art if you have photosensitivity or are epileptic. Sorry, close your eyes if you are. Click button below to proceed. And there's also a bit of sound. And I don't want this stuff to go away from the web. So I went through that with a screen reader, and you know, it's garbled, it's not really readable, but I don't want that stuff not to be there anymore. I feel like this art should be allowed. So maybe not all art can be accessible to everyone, but it doesn't mean we can't try. So 2.5 years ago, right here, Sophie Cooley, again, taught us how to make the whimsy of these 90s and noughties websites more accessible, because it can be done. Even stuff like embedded audio. I mean, that was embedded audio. I had to go and click it, and cursor trails. So here's this music, the auto-playing nightmare. You have your embed with your source. My song.midi, mine was always Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. Hidden, true, loop, yes, volume 10, auto-start, true. Awesome. Luckily, eventually we got tabs and then ways to turn off the volume from the tab. And at some point, like, you actually got an indicator which tab's making all this noise. What we do now, or should do now, strictly opt-in. There's an audio element, it has an ARIA label of play music, it has controls. There's nothing about autoplay, and you've got your source. And controls, excellent. And the trails, there may have been some trails on these websites I quickly flashed up. The cursor trails can be done through Canvas and Request Animations Frame. I don't know how that works, but there's a website there that does. And what's even more important is that you can reference prefers reduced motion and just not do it. Yeah? So, good. This makes the content more accessible, the content of your website. But does it bring the fun vibes through? And this was my big question, so this is where we're headed. Vibes is sort of a naff phrase, I think, but when we load a website, we get this visual measure of it, right? Maybe it's dark and brooding or light and airy, and we saw lots of very different moods of websites flick across. Maybe it's full of kawaii, bubblegum, anime imagery, but the content is much darker. I've seen a few of those. Or vice versa, sort of wholesome gothic. right? And those are the most fun, but how do we transmit these vibes beyond the visual layer? And I don't have any answers. There's lots of questions going to come now. So what does make a personal art project unique? Does it square with the standards-based accessibility advice? Is accessibility advice geared to public services and e-commerce, maybe? There may be truth in guidelines making websites dull, but I want my banking and government sites to be dull. Safe and predictable and boring, please. And no shade. The WCAG is exactly what it should be. It is safe and predictable and not janky, and even when the services I access through it drive me potty, I'm having to deal with some annoying citizenship stuff, it's not the site itself that's causing the issues, it's the departments behind it, right? So I started a little website, whimsica11y, to try and bridge this vibes gap. And I had some fun with it. Like, I made a nice little slide. I tried to keep all the contrasts good. I made sure I used OKLCH, so the contrast stayed no matter what color you had. It's extremely under construction. I started pouring some content in. There's this really lovely video that Apple made like 2 years ago, and they've just thrown it away. It's quite hard to find it on the internet, but it's wonderful. It's called The Greatest. Anyway. But I found myself just repeating existing advice and worrying about being wrong. And what if I accidentally excluded yet more people with my well-meaning but ultimately misguided advice? So the project stalled. I got a little bit tied up about it. I thought, well, okay, I want to tell people to go big on alt text when a picture means a lot to them. Tell us how it makes you feel. I really enjoy the rabbit warren-like site structures. If you ever go to brisray.com, you know, it's not like a neat little navigation. It's just like, here's an icon, goes to this section, goes to that section, and you can just keep browsing forever. And I feel like if the website is strange and full of twists and turns, then a disabled person should get to enjoy that same journey. But this advice doesn't really play well with the WCAG. I don't know how to say it, WCAG. I asked people on Mastodon who used assistive technologies, because there's quite a few on there, what has delighted them online. I wanted some concrete examples to help inform my advice and take back to my whimsica11y. So here's the question. Dear users of assistive technologies, what, if any, personal websites and homepages have you really enjoyed? What was it about them? Aside from personal sites, have any websites pleasantly surprised you, amused, or even delighted you? They don't need to be specific accessibility-related things at all. Being myself sighted and not disabled, I'm just not able to tell if what I enjoy can also be enjoyed across the board, and I'm really curious. And I got answers almost exclusively about functionality. People were delighted when things just worked. The bar is like, it's down here. There were one or two answers, and I'll show examples later, that weren't functionality, but it was overwhelmingly people just saying, oh, it's so great when this thing just happens, and oh, you know, it's really handy when I get like reading time indicator at the top of a big post, and it's just like. So accessibility is not only about those who are blind, but the web is sort of dull right now when you can't see it. And this has been bugging me. So Pirate Ship, my company, it amused at least one user of assistive technology. We had Florian Beges, who was a blind developer, streamer, accessibility advocate, and consultant, and gamer, and he did an audit for us. And he came across this soundboard built into our app. And this is the app once you've logged in. It's about making labels.
Ahoy there, matey! Where's me rum? Where's me booty?
I think that's one of my colleagues.
Blow me down. Send him to Davy Jones' locker.
Limey. Yarr.
Walk the plank! Dead men tell no tales.
Some of those I think were actors, but a few of them I recognise. It's kind of sad we even say Yara at the end of our meetings. But this was apparently unusual. So, I mean, okay, you might get less of this in government and bank websites, but there's quite a few e-commerce websites that could be more interesting. And the rest of our app does have accessibility issues. He found quite a few. I'm pleased to say they're actively being worked on. I think finally we've got the main user flow usable. Florian, he's been blind since birth, so he learned Braille. And a majority of people who have visual impairments do not. These people are likely to have lost their sight later in life, and we might well lose our sight later in our own lives. And I remind myself not to other these groups that I may yet join, because I fall into this othering too often for my own comfort. It's okay when you recognize this in yourself. What's being killed? Good. So, unless blind or severely visually impaired people can use Braille displays, all text online has a screen reader's voice. And the web is full of text. And we skim read all the time. We scroll, look down the headers. So people want to get through it fast and often pick voices with specific properties to help that. So Florian here says, the flatness allows for cranking it up to stupid rapid speeds, which gets harder when there's more variance in the signal. So he picks quite fricative, I suppose. He's listening to the text at somewhere like 700 words per minute. It's super fast. You can just about, if we normal sighted people, I guess, are listening to it, we can pick out the odd word here and there if we're lucky. And many of us read books and articles in an imagined voice that we think fits the author or a story's character, and imagine not having that flexibility. And it's all Microsoft George or whatever other voice you've chosen. There's a good reason why Leonie Watson, also known as Tink, has long been advocating for CSS speech. She lost her sight as an adult. When I share my slides, those two are links, and they're worth reading just to understand the lived experience of somebody who's gone through that. And of course, CSS speech would have to be opt-in, and she makes that very clear. Because someone would clearly enjoy making their fantastic prose a little too emphatic and dynamic just because they can. Yeah, that hurt me to read, I'm sorry. But it was fun to write. But the big question to me is, what has happened to our multimedia web? I feel like it was very multimedia some time ago. Why is there so little audio and video outside of YouTube? If we see sound on the web now, it's ads or other auto-playing videos. Truly a loss, says Florian. I agree that beyond it just works, there is little to delight screen reader users about the web these days. And it just works being a cause for delight is a sad indictment of the state of accessibility in general. Why? I enjoy a bit of speculation. I think that maybe a lot of browsing is happening in mobiles, in public spaces. We're often using them in silence or on the bus or the train. Or conversely, somewhere much louder where it'd be hard to hear anyway. I mean, people do have earphones, of course, but maybe that's why captions are everywhere now. I mean, I'm a classic elder millennial. I love captions. I find it very hard to watch movies without them now. There's also, as mentioned by Scott, like if everything's being drawn up in Figma first, I don't know if they have any audio things in Figma. And I really like that example of Josh Kumo's little web API dings and bloops and things like that. We just don't do that. Why else? CSS is very visual in nature, and we bend the HTML to our whims. And sometimes we confuse the structure so much that the web pages turn into entirely different documents. Or we just use it to sort of fix something. A respondent to one of my posts had said that, why is the table of contents underneath the contents? How does that make sense? Because they'd seen it with a screen reader, and I was like, well, it's shown visually on the right, which sort of makes sense then in the DOM to place it. Sorry, that's a very German pronunciation of DOM. To put it on the right-hand side, but then to then put it under the contents in the document model. So we end up with this disconnect between visual order and DOM order of elements. And is it Rachel Andrews who's been pioneering the reading flow? Is it called reading flow now? No. Reading order. Yeah, especially when we're talking about grid and masonry and possibly things turning up in different orders, that we're starting to need new CSS to say, actually, just can you make the screen readers go through it in the order that we can see it? Yeah. I mean, I absolutely love playing with CSS, and I imagine lots of you do too, kind of why you're here. But the whimsy is so visual. And how can we change that? Again, I have no answers. I have some examples. I just want us to be aware. Ooh, that jumped ahead. Okay, so some ideas and examples. So we have audio-related ideas and examples. So Keenan writes a very good blog. He's an excellent writer, and he's actually a very good speaker. So he does a podcast for, not every now and then when he's got a particularly good blog post, he does a audio counterpart. And I absolutely...
It was originally published on February 2nd, 2024.
Oh, well.
What RSS reader are you reading these words in right now?
We skipped the title.
Please don't email me the answer. Instead, whisper it into a cup, cover it with some cling wrap, and use its lingering reverberance as a sweetener for tomorrow morning's cold brew. This is a gift you've given yourself. You can thank me later. I accept words of affirmation and Apple Pay.
Can you imagine that if otherwise you would read that with a screen reader, possibly? It would be fine. His words are good. He's got lots of personality in his words. But how much more personality are we getting through the audio? And another example is the pirate ship sounds. You've seen that. Unfortunately, you do need to sign up to play with those, and it only really makes sense to use pirate ship when sending from America. We're hiring if you live in Hamburg. And yes, so this is the one that just popped up, Chris Ferdinandi, who's, you might know him as the JS guy. He's done all sorts of different things. He has a little Easter egg. I have no rhythm. I was experimenting. Anyway, so I feel like there used to be probably a few more silly Easter eggs like this that we're not getting quite so much anymore. The other thing we can do is learn about and contribute CSS speech. I think it's been sort of lingering as a thing in the, which working group would it be? It must be a CSS working group, but needs a little bit more people to be into the idea and help and contribute. So that's one thing we can do. And also, yes, calling back to the Josh Kumo's website, which I hadn't seen before, and has all these lovely web audio API things. I mean, that's lovely. We should play more with these things. And then there's other vibe transmission methods. So alt text as part of the art, or as poetry even. I like the idea that instead of going, oh no, how do I get this right? How do I describe this picture to befit? Oh no, I need to keep it short, says some advice. And how about you think of it as poetry instead? And you pay a little bit of attention to the language. And yes, you have word economy maybe to keep it short and sweet, but maybe it's not just being short, but it's having an experimental spirit with what words you're going to put in there. I mean, it's hard when you're just posting to social media and trying to shove in some alt text just to make sure it makes sense to everyone. But on your website, you can toy with it. Why not have an actual poem in there? Like, I don't see why not. Next is alt text selfies to complement profile pictures. And this is actually a project by the same people who just did the alt text as poetry. And these are really lovely. They give much more insight to a little picture of a person than just the picture would give. So Kirsten Hatfield is a white cherub-faced woman with rainbow hair, gazes lovingly at her little black doggy. He is in her arms, licking the bottom of her chin. They stand in front of a large, deep green bush covered in bright pink flowers. The sun is warm on that stop. Yeah, either way. And they don't all have to be long. Hot mirror selfie in the bathroom, wearing black graphic crop tee with black panties, my hair wet, and I'm feeling good. Why not? some of them are quite sad in places. And it's worth going to this website and just reading through lots of them, and you get much more of a sense. Like this one, a photo of myself, a white woman with short brown hair and bangs, looking glum. My left palm is cupping my chin, supporting the weight of my head. My eyelids are weights that I can barely keep open after spending all day entwined with fatigue. I will leave my house in about an hour, and no one will be able to tell that I've been sick for 14 years. She's probably a spoonie. She probably calls herself a spoonie. Like, the amount of information a little paragraph can give. I made my own one. Has it gone off the page? Yes. Sara positions her phone camera above and in front of her, trying for some kind of enigmatic expression with her eyes, which end up bisected by her red-frame varifocal glasses, which she thinks makes her look cool or sassy or something. She's wearing the pussy hat she crocheted in 2017 for the anti-Trump demos she attended that year. Just out of shot lies the chaos of a young nuclear family, toys all over the floor on the kitchen counter, covered in stuff she's too tired to tidy away. What's being killed? I need to find what comedian that was. I think we can also create atmosphere in adding fun in visually hidden text. And there's a little star here because people are like, oh, you shouldn't change the experience for one group over another group. But we leave Easter eggs in code all the time. Here's some ASCII art I put in my code. There's a bit of text here as well. You found the source code. Steal whatever you like. Credit me if you want, but there's no need to. Welcome to the personal web. You belong here. Some of this code is totally spaghetti, sorry. So we're always giving Easter eggs. Why not give Easter eggs to people who are using accessible tech? Why not? And my last point here is to maybe allow more of your personality into your writing. And I've been a bit harsh. I've said no Grammarly. You can use Grammarly. But I find every time I try Grammarly, it takes away all my Britishness and shortens everything. And it's not me anymore. And maybe people who've got English as a second or third language are taking all of this advice, and then the language ends up very the same. And think about these screen reader users who are reading all these different blog posts in the same voices all the time. Like, what makes your writing yours? It's okay if you have a dialect. It's okay if you have strange idioms. It's your humor, yourself, your text. Why not? Right? So you don't have to use all kinds of audio. You don't have to record a podcast, but you can make your text more yours. So these are only a few ideas. And I'm sure you'll have more, different ones. You might think most of those are not good. And like I say, they don't always square well with the accessibility guidelines. But the web is for everyone. And this picture gets me every time for some reason. So this is the, weird. So it's only the Olympics, right? It's 2012 Olympics. I don't know if Tim Berners-Lee is in that floating house at this point, or if it's just been lifted off him or something, but he's sitting there at a computer going, Is he underneath it? Is he there? Yes, maybe he's sitting here typing on the internet, and the seats have lit up with "This is for everyone." I'm just like, oh, yes, it is. The joy, the whimsy, the vibes too, for everyone. Thank you.